Hello everyone, it's Stella.
And Tarrant here from Meeple University. Today we'll be teaching you how to play Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux, a brand new game by Shem Phillips and published by Garfield Games.
Let's get to the game.
Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux is an all-new game replacing the original Shipwrights of the North Sea in the North Sea trilogy. The thematic aim of the game is still the same. Players are shipwrights trying to build ships to sail to victory. But in this otherwise new game, players will draft cards and manage their resources to build ships, buildings, go on raids, and advance on the 3 progress tracks. Whoever can score the most victory points over 5 rounds of play will win the game. I'll take you through the 3 to 5 player rules first. To set up, each player takes a player board and then 3 discs and an Ikea and Labourer in matching colour. Shuffle the 6 hut cards and deal 1 to each player at random. Any remaining copies of any of these components are returned to the box. From top to bottom, place your Ikea, Labourer and hut to the left of your player board, each on the unupgraded side showing the rune, and then stack your 3 discs on the starting spaces of the progress tracks. Check the icon in the top right of your hut card and then advance your marker 1 step on that progress track. From left to right across the top of this board, place the following cards. For the round cards, which show this back, shuffle up the deck of 12 and then deal 5 into the leftmost space. Leave the second space empty for now. The cards with the red raid rune go in the 3rd space, and with the blue trade rune in the 4th space, each in a shuffled face down deck. Find the 8 hero cards. These have the same picture on each side. In the next spaces, place Sven, Thura and Frauda, and then a stack of all of the Randy cards. You only need 1 per player. The large deck of village cards is shuffled and placed in the final space with room for a discard pile below. Finally, the Nemesis cards are used only for solo play. You can return those to the box. Make supplies of all of the game's resources. You've got the basic resources, wool, oak and iron, and the advanced resource gold, as well as silver and workers. Finally, give each player starting resources. 3 workers, a wool, an oak, an iron, a gold, and 2 silver. You're now ready to play. Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux is played over 5 rounds, which you'll keep track of with these round cards. Each round is played in 5 phases. Firstly, you'll flip the next round card over. Second is drafting, where players will draft cards until they have 6 for the round. Third is actions. Players will use the cards they've taken as well as the resources they've collected to take actions, which can include building, discarding cards, or utilising workers on buildings. Players will use up all 6 of their cards in this phase. Fourth is income, where players will gain incomes and reset for the next round. And 5th is heroes, where players gain rewards for leading on the progress tracks. There are many ways to score points, which are indicated by the yellow flag, but as you are shipwrights, most of them are going to come from constructing ships. Whoever's built up the most victory points by the end of 5 rounds will win the game. The first step of each round is to flip the round card over. There are several icons at the top of the card, but in the 3 to 5 player game, only the arrows matter. This determines the direction you'll pass cards during drafting. All of the rest of this information relates to trades, which I'll cover in the actions phase. Second is drafting. Begin by giving each player 6 cards from the top of the deck. If the draw deck ever runs out, shuffle the discard pile to form a new draw deck. Players now conduct a circular draft. You'll look at all of the cards that you drew, choose one that you wish to keep, place it face down in front of yourself, and then hand those cards to your neighbour in the direction of the arrows on the round card. You'll receive 5 cards from the neighbour on your other side. Look at those, choose one of those to keep, and then hand the rest on, repeating the process until you've selected 6 cards. You'll now proceed to the actions phase and all players may resolve the actions phase simultaneously and independently of each other. In this phase, you'll use the resources that you already have and the cards that you've just drafted to take as many actions as you'd like. Continue until you choose to stop taking actions, with the only restriction being that you must have used up all of the cards in your hand by the end of the phase. You're not allowed to carry any of these forward to the next round. I'll now take you through all of the different available actions. First, you can discard cards from your hand for resources. There are 5 different types of card in the game, but they can all be used for this purpose. Simply discard the card from your hand to the common discard pile and gain the resource showing above the red X. In this case, you would discard the card and gain a new worker from the supply. You can make trades. One of the basic ways to gain the resources that you need is by making the trades showing on the front and back of the round cards. The front of the card will always show the 3 basic resources and how much silver it would cost to purchase it in this round. This will always be some number between 1 and 3, so certain resources will be cheaper in certain rounds. The back of the card is always the same. You can exchange one of each basic resource for a gold, and you can spend a gold to get a 1 basic resource discount on another action that you're taking. You can take any of these trades as often as you'd like during the actions phase. Ignore this last row. This simply reminds you that gold will be worth victory points at game's end. You can construct a building directly from your hand down to below your player board. Buildings are cards that have a brown bar at the bottom and one of these partial circle icons. To build one, take it from your hand to an empty slot and pay the resources in the top left back to the supply. Here it would be 2 workers, a wool and a gold. This building will be worth as many victory points as shown in the flag at the end of the game, but immediately look at any icons below the flag and advance 1 step on the matching progress track for each. When you advance into a space which has one of these rune bonuses attached to it, you immediately gain that bonus. I'll describe what those are a little bit later. There are 3 types of card which show this icon in the top left corner, the building and the gold. These are the townspeople with the brown bar, the jarls with the green bar, and the craftspeople with the blue bar. As an action, you can take any one of these 3 card types from your hand, pay 1 gold to the supply, and then slide that card underneath one of your buildings so that only the bottom bar is visible. You may only have a maximum of 1 card tucked underneath each building, but you may freely discard a tucked card at any time to make room for another. There is no immediate effect when you tuck either a craftsperson or a townsperson. When you tuck a jarl, immediately advance on the matching progress track, and you'll score these points if it's still tucked at the end of the game. As an action, you can deploy a worker from your supply onto the worker placement space of a building that you've constructed. You may now resolve the brown bar effect on that building, and if applicable, the brown bar effect on any townsfolk card tucked under it. You can do these in either order. Here I could start by spending a gold to get any 2 basic resources and a silver, and then spend that same silver to get a new worker. If there's a jarl or a craftsperson tucked under the building, it has no effect. You would resolve only the brown bar effect. Workers that you've placed on buildings are not lost. You'll get them back to your supply during the income phase. However, when a worker is on one of these cards, you are not allowed to spend it as part of the cost of another card. In this case, these 2 workers would not be enough to afford this card. There are pre-printed action spaces on the 4th and 5th slots of your player board which function in the same way, as long as you haven't covered it up with a card. Tucking townsfolk under buildings is a way that you can use that townsfolk's ability over and over. But if you only want to use a townsfolk ability once and not have to pay the gold cost for tucking, you can do that as an action. Simply discard the card from your hand and resolve its ability once. Now we come to the shipbuilding actions, and these are the actions which involve your player board. You're not simply allowed to construct ships from your hand. You have to put them into your dock to build them before finishing. There are two types of card involved in shipbuilding, and they both have the blue bar at the bottom. The ships have a solid blue bar, and the craftspeople, whom we saw before, have a brown and blue bar. As an action, you may take any one of these cards from your hand and place it into the next empty slot on your player board. If there is a worker on that slot, return it to the supply. Once a ship is on your board, you can take an action to build it by using the craftspeople and spending the resources in the top left corner. Spending the resources works the same way as it did for constructing buildings, although the costs are generally higher. Here I'd need to return 3 workers, 3 oak, 2 wool, 5 stone and a gold to the supply. I must then also provide the craft icons, and there are 7 different craft icons in the game. One way to do this is discard the craft people from your player board which have the matching icons. Here I could get the yellow trowel by discarding this artisan, and get the beige chisel by spending a silver to discard this carpenter. If you've tucked craftspeople under buildings who have those icons, then you can gain the icons from them without discarding the cards. Once again, here the yellow trowel would be free, the beige chisel would cost a silver to use. You don't need to activate the building with a worker to do this. These icons are simply permanently available to you. The third option is to use your labourer, who is one of your starting cards, and you would have to discard a card from your hand and spend 1 gold in order to gain 1 craft icon of your choice, represented by this icon. You can use the labourer multiple times on the same ship. The only thing you can't do is discard a craftsperson directly from your hand to get the icons. It must be placed on your player board first and discarded from there. Having constructed the ship, you'll now add it to your fleet. You'll gain the victory points in its top right at the end of the game, and immediately gain the steps on the progress track as shown below it. There'll also be a benefit in the blue strip at the bottom of the card that you'll now unlock. And this could be end of game points indicated by the flag. It could be an immediate once-off effect indicated by the lightning bolt. Or it could be an ongoing income effect indicated by the moon. When one of your progress markers enters or passes through a space that's connected to a rune, and this will be 4, 8 and 12 on each track, immediately gain the benefit of that rune. For the yellow rune, flip over to upgrade one of your starter cards. Upgrading your Akia will increase your worker income each round. Upgrading your labourer makes using the labourer cheaper. And upgrading a hut makes its action more powerful. If there was already a worker on the hut, return it to the space. When you gain a trade rune, take the top trade card. You then have 2 options. Either gain the immediate benefit at the top of the card, and then flip the card face down in case you need to count them for endgame scoring. Or leave the card face up and slide it underneath one of your ships which doesn't already have a trade card under it. This will give you an additional income in each income phase. When you get the military rune, take 1 raid card. Then place it face up beside your player board. This now gives you access to the final action, raiding a settlement. To do this, spend 0, 1 or 2 workers, depending on your position on the military progress track, gain the benefit shown at the bottom of the card, and then flip the card face down. You'll get to flip all of these face up again during each income phase, giving you several attempts to raid these settlements across the rounds. Those are all of the actions available to you, and I'll go through them again now quickly, just so you know what you can and can't do with each card. Any card can be discarded from your hand to gain the resource shown above the red X. The only other use for a building card is to build it straight from your hand, paying the resources, and gaining access to its worker placement space for later. A townsfolk card can be discarded from your hand to resolve its brown bar effect once, or you can pay a gold to tuck it underneath a building. Doing this enhances the worker placement action of the building you tuck it under. The only other use for a Jarl is to pay 1 gold to tuck that under a building and immediately gain the progress and gain the victory points at the end of the game. The 2 ways to use a craftsperson from hand are to pay a gold to tuck it underneath one of your buildings, giving you access to its craft icons on a permanent basis, or play it from your hand to your player board. The only other way to play a ship card is to play it from your hand onto your player board. You can later take an action to construct a ship from your player board, moving it to above your board, and paying the craft icons and resources. You can trade for resources based on what's printed on the round cards. You can place a worker from your supply onto a worker placement space, either on a building or your player board to resolve the action. And you can spend workers from your supply to raid a settlement. By the end of the action phase, your hand must be empty, and so if you've got nothing else to do, you'll simply discard the cards to gain the resources on them. Once all players are done, proceed to the income phase. Income has 3 steps and all players may resolve simultaneously. First, gain any resources printed next to the moon icon on your trade or ship cards. Second, return all workers from worker placement spaces to your supply. Finally, flip any of your face down raid cards face up. The 5th and final step is to distribute hero cards. This step is done anew in every round, so if you have any heroes from previous rounds, return them before resolving. Whoever is leading on military progress gains the Sven hero. Whoever is leading on trade gains the Thura hero, and whoever leads on renown gains the Froda hero. In the case of a tie, nobody gets that hero. The owners will now have access to these ongoing abilities throughout the subsequent round. Anyone who did not receive one of the 3 other heroes takes a copy of the Randy hero. You'll now proceed to the next round. Once 5 rounds are complete, the game is over and players count up their final scores. You'll gain points based on what's in the top right corner of any of your constructed ships and buildings, plus your starter cards if upgraded, points on any tucked Jarls, points from any heroes that you gained in the final round, points from any endgame scoring objectives on your constructed ships, points for any progress track where you reached at least step 15, and finally use the final round's trade cards to trade in any silver for basic resources for gold, and then gain 1 point per gold. The player with the highest score wins. If tied, whoever has the most leftover basic resources wins. If still tied, most leftover workers, and if still tied, victory is shared. The 1 and 2 player modes of the game are mostly played the same, with some variations to the drafting and the tracks. At 2 players during setup, you'll choose one neutral colour and add their pieces onto the tracks. Then, when revealing a round card each round, you'll advance the neutral markers according to the top left of the card. You can now ignore the arrows and the points. Each round's draft is done in 3 steps. Firstly, each player will draw 5 cards from the deck, choose 2 to keep, and then swap the other 3 with the opponent. Each player now draws a 4th card, chooses 2 to keep, and swaps the other 2 back with the opponent. Finally, each player draws a 3rd card, once again chooses 2, and then discards the final cards. There are no changes to actions or incomes, but when giving out heroes, you'll consider the position of the neutral player's pieces for whether anyone gets the hero or not. The neutral player does not have a score, and whichever human player has the higher score wins. In the solo mode, you'll also use a single neutral opponent, and at the start of each round, as in 2-player, you'll advance the neutral opponent's pieces according to the round card. In the draft, you'll draw 5 cards from the deck and keep 2 of them, discarding the others. Then draw 4 cards and keep 2, discarding the others. And finally, draw 3 and keep 2 to bring you to 6. You'll again take the neutral player's pieces into account for heroes. Your aim in the game is to score at least as much as the sum of all of the points on the 5 round cards. For a more advanced solo game, choose one of the 4 Nemesis cards. The neutral player will now get some additional starting advancements on the progress track, and there will be a passive negative effect which makes your game harder. Finally, there are 6 new rune stones which come with the game, and these make Shipwrights Redux compatible with the original North Sea Rune Saga campaign.
And that's how to play Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux. We hope that you enjoyed the video.
And do check out the project page for the game. We'll put a link to that in the description below.
Thank you so much for watching. Everything you do will help us. Every single view, every time you like our videos, our Instagram, every single comment, and let us know that you're there. And make sure you're doing something fun today. See you next time.